Hello, everyone. I'm Reiki Master Sharon, and this is today's episode of Meeting of the Minds with Max Weltman. He is my uh, confident creator coach, and I worked personally with Max for 5 days, and I think that he has some really interesting things to offer. Today, we're going to be talking about how marketing is different in the spiritual community. So, Max, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, thank you, Sharon. Um, Thanks for the introduction. So, yes, I am Max. I am a confident creator coach helping you hit record for the first time so that you can learn through the action of doing more so than just studying and never taking action, especially when it comes to recording your first reel for your service or your business or your art. Um, yeah, giving like one single identity has always been tough for me, but I'm a musician, a traveler, a nomad from Vermont, and I currently live in Tunisia, and I'm calling in from France.
Very exciting. How's France over there?
It's nice. I'm in the south, and it's kind of hot already, but it's nice to be back. It's cool. I like how the streets are all really windy, but then they lead to these like open spaces that are really just nice. There's a lot of visual appeal in Europe, which is always enjoyable.
I think
Have you
it's
been?
always fun to travel to new places because you get so
Mm,
inspired by seeing new things that you're not used to
mm,
seeing every day. I think we kind
yeah,
of take advantage of the beauty around us once we've been seeing it, every day
yeah,
for 20 years.
yeah.
So,
And
Max, would you tell me, how do you feel like marketing in the spiritual community is different?
it's a good question. So in the spiritual community, I find people are really about storytelling and connecting with people through their own stories. And that is my belief of the essence of marketing is that marketing is evoking emotions and telling stories and being able to use that as the lens through which you connect to your audience. And not only in terms of storytelling, but in the spiritual community, I find there's also this sense of like responsibility, personal responsibility. And like I've seen people on Facebook who did a launch and it completely failed. And then their next week of post is my launch completely failed. It flopped. I'm not going to hide this from you. But I took it as an experience to go within and to learn about myself and what I thought people wanted and how I went about this. And therefore, it's actually not been a failure, but a huge learning experience. And I'm going to continue to learn. And I find that's really refreshing and interesting to read because that's not corporate. Like corporations don't really do that, and if they do, it's like a newsletter in their email at best. That's like vague, and that they're not telling you everything, and so you get this kind of feeling like, okay, the corporation is sharing this story or this excuse or this reason because they feel they have to, or maybe they do have to. Whereas I find the people who are interesting for me to follow, whether or not I'm in their niche. Um, as far as spiritual entrepreneurs, they are sharing because their marketing is also a sense of personal expression, if that makes sense. It's almost like a blog, but there might be a CTA to something at the end. You know, you're learning not only about them, but about like how their experiences can help you. And I'm being kind of general, but that's one of the big differences that I see. Um, and I find it really interesting. And of course, within a spiritual community, you also have the full spectrum of people and marketing and all of that. But overall, I find that there's more of a sense of learning and using their marketing and their business as a source of self growth. And therefore, it's this cycle that the business grows them and they grow the business, and the business grows them and they grow the business. That's really refreshing and organic.
I think like sometimes when you see when a corporation or something messes up, it's more like they're throwing hush money. You know what I
Mm,
mean?
uh-huh,
Like we're
uh-huh.
not gonna we don't really want to admit that what we did was wrong. We're just gonna,
Mm,
send you some money to be quiet about it, you know. But I
yeah.
think there is something to be said about that vulnerability,
Mm,
you know, to be
mm,
able to admit that you're human and that
mm,
maybe the first time that you do something isn't going to be successful right away,
mm,
but it is a great learning opportunity to figure out what didn't work for you and what did work for you
mm,
and what people need. And, I think for me personally, like the people that I see in the spiritual community that I really connect with, that I don't mind giving to as appreciation. They're people who are showing up consistently. They're people that are, not afraid to say, hey, this is what I'm offering. This is, if you feel called to join me, then,
mm,
this is how you can get in contact with me. There's no
mm,
push. Like, I feel like me as being a spiritual person, I'm very resistant to manipulation and control.
mm,
Those
mm,
tactics are things that really send off red flags for me. Like, I don't
mm,
want to feel like, you know, I'm going to somebody and they're going to, kind of take advantage of me.
mm,
I like the fact that they're very more empowering with their
mm,
marketing and
mm,
how they present their offer. And I think that's how, I like to model my
mm,
things as well. It's like, this is what I'm offering. If you feel that you're called to work with me, this is how you can do it, you
mm,
know? And there is no, push or I worked for a lawn service company one time.
mm,
I was doing telemarketing. And
mm,
as soon as I would get a nice person on the phone, they would take the phone from me and pretty much pressure her or them into letting them come out to do an evaluation for their lawn. And I really did not like that because if someone really doesn't want you to come out, if someone really doesn't want you to, impede on them with your services, I don't feel like that should be something that's exploited, you know? So, um, what is something that made you change the way that you view marketing?
It's a good question. I hated marketing most of my life. Growing up, I had this belief like, oh, rich people are horrible, business is horrible. I'm never going to do anything in business. Um, like my grandma's kind of like, you need to study business or finance or be a doctor or something. And I just wanted to play music and chill and go on tour like all the rock bands I used to read about. Um, I always knew life could be more than just something soulless, a cubicle and they go home and you have 2 days off, and 2 weeks of vacation a year. But I didn't know anything else. And I always saw business as like just as bad as that because it was all I knew. Like no one told me growing up, like, wow, did you know that you can fully express yourself and create money in alignment through providing value to someone and solving their problems? Like, and that's all it is. When you've overcome something, you can then teach it to somebody else or create a service or product to help other people solve that same thing because you have experience in it. I never heard that message. And I just was like depressed all the time and feeling existential dread and like, what's the meaning of life? And like, what the hell am I doing here? And like, if I can't just play music, I don't want to be here. But I don't know how to make money so that I can just play music. And I mean, rent's already like quadrupled since I was 15 when I wasn't even looking at rents, you know? Um, and over time, like I graduated from school and I remember I saw someone who was in some classes with me who got into copywriting and started like his profile changed, his Facebook posts changed, and I didn't even know what copywriting was. And for anyone watching, copywriting is not copy Right, where you invent something. It's copy Writing, like it's a form of writing. And it's all the writing that you see in your marketing emails or your newsletters and Facebook posts, and it's even scripts and podcast descriptions and all kinds of things. So his posts weren't just like, look at me in the woods. It was like how you can write a book in 90 days, like here's how you can do it. And at first I was like, what is this? And then I saw him start to change, and then he got some clients, and I was like, interesting. And it was a completely different vibe than the rest of my profile. And I remember I'd always been into like learning about like tantra and like kind of energies and spiritual things, and that became a bigger interest. And those accounts too, I mean, they all have businesses. Those accounts too are some of the most realist and rawest. Uh, and some of the posts were just storytelling of like, wow, like emotionally here's how I move the energy with my body, like when I'm sad, or spending time in nature grounds me. And it didn't always feel like copywriting. It just felt like stories. And things started to change. And then that friend, he introduced me to somebody who was looking for a copywriter on her team. She was a solopreneur who was overwhelmed. She had too many clients. And I had kind of known a little bit about copywriting just from hearing him talk about it. And all her clients were spiritual coaches. And I remember she had one kind of like big business coach guy, but he was like spiritual as a person, although it wasn't really in his content that much, you know? And I was writing these stories for people all of a sudden. I had to like listen to interviews and kind of turn it into 10 Facebook posts, or emails, or a webinar script, including their story, this and that, because webinars were a big thing in like pre 2020. Um, and through writing that, like I said, I had to watch all these interviews with people, and a few of them I got to talk to. It was really, really interesting to hear all these like spiritual business people had such struggles in their life. And it really flipped. It was like one of the powerful things that flipped me from thinking like all rich people are bad, all business is bad, to seeing that I was just looking at a sliver of like rich people and businesses. Um, a person's a person, no matter how much money they have. You could be good or bad no matter where you come from. And that was really, really interesting because they had all been broke growing up. Some of them were dirt poor. There was another company I worked for, another guy I worked for later on. He had some clients like from various countries all over the world. Some of them grew up like dirt poor. Some of them like this one guy who was starting a trucking company as his first business. Now he does other things. And like his mom died, his wife had a miscarriage, and like I don't remember what happened with the trucks. Like they caught on fire or something, you know, like all in the same month. And he had no money at the time, and he'd just gotten a loan to buy the trucks for his company, And now he's a multimillionaire. When I talked to him, like 10 or 20 years later, and it's really, really interesting, and something that I think holds a lot of the people who continue to stay in integrity together is some kind of faith, some kind of spiritual belief, some kind of connection. And it's funny because if you start following spiritual business pages and people and groups, you'll see that there are some low vibe people in there. Sometimes they masquerade as high vibe, and sometimes they might actually think they are. Um, the second category is more likely to learn and take responsibility. But yeah, some people do take advantage of the spiritual space in a business sense as well. But I think if you really, really tune in, you can tell. I think if you really, really tune in, you can tell who's just using the business like as a way to channel their pain further and their self. It's kind of like self-harm. And there's people that use it for healing, and you can tell. You can really tell. Um, So I started to see business as freedom and money as just a tool in that freedom. And I started to see how I created scarcity for myself out of my mind and what that did to my psyche and how I showed up in relationships and with my family and dating and with my music. And and yes, money is easily used as a band-aid too, but you have more options. And I think money, for me, what money represents, like if I was to have $1 million today, that wouldn't represent like $1 million or, oh, I'm gonna go get some Lambos, but it would be like, who did I become in the process? Like, what does that millionaire version of myself look like? Does he wake up early? Does he lift weights? Does he swim for exercise? Does he, hike often? Does he, um, set boundaries? Is he disciplined? Does he read books? And that's what it represents to me. And I think that when we connect on values like that, it's so rare in today's society, in the mainstream, that I think we tend to come together. And I don't know if any of that resonates with you, or if you've had a similar experience, but I'm also interested in like how you would answer the same question.
Like, I feel that everything is energy, including money.
Mm, mm-hmm,
And there comes a point where we have these limited beliefs that kind of hold us back from believing that we're worthy of it or that we deserve
mm,
it, or, there's this idea that we have to earn money to be worthy of it, or to
mm,
even earn energy from other people, you know?
mm,
Like, and I think there is something to be said about having a community with people and
mm,
speaking with people, but I believe that everybody is born with inherent worth.
mm,
And I believe that there are so many stories of people who are millionaires who have gone through something where they lost everything. They
mm,
lost I think Tony Robbins lost his house in a fire or something like that. He had to start over.
mm,
Victor Otto, he said that he sold his house and did the RV thing while he was, cultivating his coaching program. He was, you
mm,
know, coaching out of his van or,
mm,
at different restaurants that had Wi-Fi. And,
mm,
you think like Aaron Doughty, he moved back in with his dad to, to cultivate his YouTube page to get, now he has over millions of followers. And it's just like these people, they believed so fully in their purpose and in their vision that they were willing to let go of the things that they built their life around to be able to actually hone in on what they're trying to cultivate and what they're trying to offer to humanity because they believed in it so much. And I think sometimes we think that money is something to get material things like cars and houses and things like that, but it can also be a very powerful tool in, helping the people around you. I mean, Tony Robbins, I think, is um he's raised millions of dollars in food for, was it Feeding America, or I'm not really sure which organization he's with, but that is something that he is able to do because he was able to, hone in on his purpose and really use that money as a tool to help other people. And, he came from nothing too, he had issues with not having food at Thanksgiving and, being raised in a lack mentality. But even if you have these things that you've endured, you can still rise above those. You can still transmute those into different mindsets that really
mm,
powerfully shift you onto a higher timeline, is how I see it.
mm,
I believe once we consciously decide that we're going to look at things differently, then everything kind of shifts to rise to that reality.
mm,
So that's kind of how. I would answer that question about the money. I
Uh,
guess for the marketing, um, I was kind of in the same boat where I felt like a lot of the marketing that I seen was very manipulative and
mm,
I didn't like that. But when I got into the spiritual community, I seen that it could be done in a way that was
mm,
empowering and self-honoring to other
mm,
people. And people are still making millions of money doing it. And
mm,
they're helping thousands of people.
mm,
And, you know, the money that you're investing in their offer is going towards things that are helping to expand other people too. We can look at
mm,
them as not to be jealous of them, but to look at them as influence, to look at
uh-huh,
them as something that we can say, hey, they did it, we can do it too. You
uh-huh,
know, like it's not competition. And
mm,
I think that's what's great about being in the spiritual community because we realize that I might be offering very similar to the same thing that you are, but it's never going to be the same because I'm doing it
uh-huh,
authentically as myself and you're doing it authentically as yourself. And your
uh-huh,
vibration is going to meet the people who need it, and my vibration is going to meet the
uh-huh,
people who need it. And there may be people who do both, and there
uh-huh,
may be something that I teach differently than you that someone else can learn from me, and I can learn from you, and I can say, hey, so and so does this really well. Maybe you should go talk to them, and we can kind of encourage and uplift and promote each other in that way, in that aspect, which is
mm,
another reason why I created this meeting of the minds, is because I enjoy speaking with other people who are in the spiritual community, and
mm,
I want people to see what they have to offer too. And I
mm,
think it's nice to have this back and forth where we can, really talk about things without there being this societal pressure to be a
mm.
certain way. Everything just kind of comes out the way it's supposed to. So,
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I just want to toss in a little bit of inspiration. You made me think of this concept of um, how like the same service done by two different people, or maybe companies if you grow big enough, but let's talk like solopreneurs, um, is still not going to be the same. And thus, if you're anyone watching this, if you're ever hesitant to do something because it's the same as somebody else, or you feel that you're copying, just know that that's an actual business recommendation because it means that there's demand for whatever service that is. And if there's demand for something, well, you already have clients. You just have to kind of carve out your exact niche, of course. That's for being able to communicate it. Like if two people read tarot cards and that's their whole service, those two people are going to interpret the same thing very differently. Two people doing Reiki are not going to do it the same way, although they're doing the same thing. They might have even studied with the same teacher. So, in fact, you actually normally shouldn't reinvent the wheel, invent something completely new because there won't be demand for it, and you'll have to be convincing people to, buy your triangular wheel when they don't think that they need it. Whereas if you just start a business doing round wheels, people are already going to say, "Oh, I like round wheels, and this person's round wheel seems to call me out." Um, and yeah, and then you can have all the creators doing something similar meet and we can all grow together and then the services are only going to get better.
agree. So, what would you feel is something that really worked for you in your journey in marketing?
I didn't catch the end of the question. Something that really worked for me.
Oh, what
There was
was
a loud
like something
motorcycle.
that you learned through marketing that you found was super helpful in reaching people?
Something. There's a lot of ways to answer this question, and overall, what I found is, um, I think the more you tune into yourself and help yourself, the more you're gonna grow and become more powerful, so to speak, like a superhero, and be able to grow your brand and grow your business more smoothly. And it's never smooth, by the way. You can get to a point where your system and everything is is pretty understood, but life is life, and you always have to be flexible too. So just showing up and continuing to show up for myself, I think has been really great. And because a lot of it, if you have the best strategies, but you yourself aren't, resting and aren't studying and learning and taking care of yourself as well, you won't be able to give those amazing techniques and strategies. So I think people forget about that sometimes. Like it's really easy, especially when you do stuff online, to be trapped to your computer all the time. And me, I live in one time zone, I work in another time zone, and I take coaching from another time zone. And then, so it's like the coaching's out of Australia, which has like five or six time zones. And one of my main services, actually, two of my main services are one's purely American and one's heavily American. And America has three different time zones, and more if you count Hawaii, who I worked with someone in Hawaii at one point. And basically, I sometimes find myself on the computer all day. And some of my best insights come when I'm jogging or when I'm out walking on a trail somewhere. And, living in Tunisia, coming to France has been really nice because there's more parks just easily accessible. In the city in Tunisia, there's not really parks. There's nowhere, see, like the beach. There's nowhere really green within walking distance without driving. In the cities, at least in the part where I live. Uh, There's a park downtown, but I don't jog there. Um, and all of that is important. And then in terms of marketing, um, telling stories is, I think, the simplest answer I can give. And beyond telling stories is creating relationships without expectation. So that might mean um, you think somebody is the perfect fit to buy your service, and you can even tell them that if it's honest. But you're not gonna force anybody. And if someone who isn't your idea of a perfect fit is interested in working with you, you might still work with them. But beyond those two scenarios, marketing, I think, is very online now. And if you think of a networking event in person, let's say in the 80s, right, when there's no internet uh, readily available, the only way you would grow your network, which is your net worth, is by tapping people on the shoulder at this event and saying, "Hi, I like your shirt. Oh, wow, you have a cool necklace. Oh, it looks like you've traveled a lot." Um, and you just kind of build rapport with people, and some of those connections might stay kind of surface level, and some of those connections might really blossom into friendship or business partnership, and some of them might just I don't know, maybe you find you don't like each other or something. But my point is you learn to talk, and you don't even have to position yourself as like, hi, I'm this and this business person, this and this. You can just be yourself. And of course you're there with some remembrance that you're giving a service, but social media can be very much the same. Like a lot of people, they forget the important steps of adding people on Instagram or Facebook, like adding new friends, and not randomly either, and of starting conversations. There is something to be said for attraction marketing, magnetic marketing, but unless you're the complete master of content, which very few of us are, and getting people to like inbound only, um, that's very slow. And so a lot of us are in a position when we start businesses where we're doing our passion, but we also do need the money. Maybe we just quit a job or we really, really want to quit this job that's sucking away our soul. So my point is that the money's there, right? And talking to people, chatting with them on comments too. It's not just in the DMs, although the DMs is really important, but like engaging with people, like and doing so again without expectation. So actually, if you think somebody's painting is cool, you say it's cool. This is what it made me think. If you think somebody's, um, you know, maybe they're starting up being a coach and they are doing their initial posts and you thought that they shared an authentic message, you can say that, you know, And in the DMs, that's also really, really important because that's where you form connections, build rapport, and you get to test yourself. Because when you follow up with somebody who ghosted you, you know, do you see how that alone can like come from a place of neediness or from a place of abundance and service and belief in yourself and belief in them? And personally, that's something that I struggle with myself too. Sometimes I feel that if I don't have like an exact service fully ready and all this stuff, that like I should just leave the people who ghosted. Um, but something I've been learning is you'll never know where a connection leads. And I know in the coaching world, sometimes it takes people years before they buy from you, you know? And so there you do walk this fine line of like it's a little different than friends, of it's like, are you nurturing a client or are you just, staying in contact with somebody or this or that? But and that especially for sensitive people and kind of introverts, like I used to be super introverted and now I'm kind of both and in the middle, um, depending on the day. Um, I think your self-talk in your head and the way you fire yourself up and find your center, which are different and the same. Like meditation doesn't necessarily fire you up, but like affirmations and telling yourself you're the best, not from a place of ego, but from a heart-based place, can really go far. And and if you truly believe that your service is helping the world, then in that sense, these connections, again, it's if you take away the messaging and you think about it in person, you're passing out flyers. I mean, at some point you do have to be proactive, and imagine passing out flyers and kind of yelling at people for not taking it, or passing out flyers in a way where you're actually recognizing each human that you come in contact with. And you can do that in the messaging. And so that's been a big thing for me because I used to think that I could just attract people. And it's slow and you don't know what relationships you're actually missing out on,
I
you know?
agree, because like even with me cultivating the beta testing program for the Oracle
Mm,
program, like I'm reaching out to the people who I think would be a good fit for it,
mm,
because I'm not really getting a whole lot of people. Like there was a few people who said like, "Hey, I'm interested," but sometimes those fall off, sometimes those don't follow through, and there's some people who get busy, and I gently remind them like, "Hey, I was just wondering if you got to take a look at the landing page. We're starting on
mm,
Sunday. I'd really love to have you in the group." And I really mean that, and I think people can see, they can feel the difference, they can feel your excitement, they can feel
mm,
your
mm,
authenticity, that you actually want them to be a part of this and that you believe in it. And
uh-huh.
I think that is what is really magnetic about it. Because, like, even if you go to a networking event, if you just go sit in the corner and be a wallflower, chances are people aren't gonna come up and talk to you. You go to that event with an idea, with a purpose, knowing that you're excited about what you have to offer, and you're looking for the people who you feel like it's gonna help.
Mm,
So I think, it's good to maintain the sense of community even if people don't buy from you, that
mm,
you're saying like, yeah, we networked and we met each other and we're friends and
mm,
we're encouraging each other. And I might decide one day, hey, I really want to do this thing, and then I start thinking, okay, how do I go about doing that thing? And then
mm,
I go, oh, hey, Max does great work with marketing and helping me to refine my stuff. So like I should reach out to Max and see if he's got some openings. Like people will remember you because they know that you guys have interacted, you
mm,
actually care, you're confident about your message. Same with Callie, that we are both friends with. Like
mm,
I've looked at her art on Facebook and she's a wonderful artist. And, if I ever came to a point where I needed some kind of artwork done like that, I know that I can reach out to her. You know what I
mm,
mean?
mm,
So it's really great to be able to have this sense of community because if you have a friend who is looking for those things, you can say, "Oh, hey, I have a friend that does
Yeah.
that," you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you can direct them to them.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes we don't really think of how important our brand identity really is.
Yeah.
Like I look at my cousin, he owns a glass company, and this man is friends with everybody. Everybody
Mm,
knows my cousin. And that is what makes him such a wonderful business owner because people know that he does honest work, he's going to give you honest price, and
mm,
he's friendly and he cares, you
mm,
know? And I think that is the biggest thing that people don't realize is that, like you got to put yourself out there to know who you are.
mm,
I mean,
mm-hmm,
millions of people know who Tony Robbins is because he does these wonderful seminars for free and he helps all
mm,
these people with raising money and he does it out of, I believe, the pure intentions of his heart. You know,
mm,
I when I watch Tony Robbins, I can tell that he's doing it because he wants to see everybody who's in that
mm,
seminar grow. And
mm,
he knows what it's like to be at the very bottom,
mm,
So
mm.
I think that what you touched on was really important.
And you know what?
Um,
Can I add one more thing to
yeah,
that as well?
go ahead.
So a lot of people say, well, why can't it be free then? Why doesn't Tony Robbins help people for free? And I just want to speak on that a bit because I also used to be asking questions like that. And there's one thing where a lot of times people who say like, because Tony Robbins has some things that I think are quite expensive, like I think private coaching with him is like $1 million or something. Um, and a lot of people do post a ton of free content. I've also seen some kind of like spiritual accounts that I follow, like get asked that when they do like Instagram polls and they're like, well, actually, did you see my free YouTube channel and my free, videos here and content here, like breaking down like alchemy and all this stuff? Like, so, I do. But then when everything is free, there's not as much commitment. It's harder to verify commitment. So for example, in a 3 day like unlock your power within this is what it's called UPW with Tony Robbins. I don't know how much it costs. I've known people who have gone. I think one of the coaches I work with has gone um, once or twice, and I would imagine it's at least a few hundred, probably a few thousand. I'd imagine at the minimum. And so let's pretend it's 5,000, 5K. So why does it have to be 5K? Well, most people are going to say no. Like that's 5K. I don't have 5K. But when your car needs a 5K repair, what do? You say, I got to find the money. When your house needs a 5K repair, what do? You say, I need to find the money. When your life, spirit, and soul and your way of making money, if you know the Ikigai philosophy, where it's like what you love, what the world needs, what you're good at, and what makes you money is broken. We say, I just got to suffer through it, you know? And I think there's something wrong with that. And I've invested a lot of money in coaching, and I haven't made back what I've invested as we speak. I have not, but I still believe in that type of investing. And yes, you have to make sure you believe in the person that you're going to work with, that you're investing with, because like, there are people who scam, but that exists in every industry and every business and every country as well. So it's not unique to that industry, and it's what you focus on. Like I personally see a lot of, for example, coaches and entrepreneurs and service people who I think are amazing people, and I can feel they're amazing people. So I think there's no shortage of that. Um, if I was to have an event, and maybe we talked about this when we were like a couple weeks ago, and I charge $5 at the door, there's going to be some people who say, no, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to pay $5. So I know at least if people come, they're willing to pay $5. So they're committed enough to overcome that little hurdle. Now, if I said it's like 5K to, to work with me for a weekend, but you're gonna get X, X, and X. If you're committed to yourself and you believe that the relationship can give you that, I don't always understand why it's taboo, you know? And if you do it, then you're committed. You're saying yes to yourself. And that's something that has really struck me as well, especially in the spiritual community. Um, and viewing, I mean, that's kind of like sales, what I just talked about. But I also like the side of it where it's commitment, it's self-commitment. And if you're not ready for like a commitment to a transformation in that moment, yeah, like there's always like free stuff, but it's often a lot harder to just rely on like free content to have like a massive transformation. So, make sure you research and look up services that you're interested in, talk to the people running them, talk to people in those programs, Google it, ChatGPT it, make sure that the benefits resonate with you. But I see this taboo with investing and committing and using money as the way to say it because you know, I could say, yes, Sharon, I want to work with you for a weekend, and my yes was there, but then I don't actually commit. And money is a way of saying yes without actually saying the words yes. It's like a strong yes. It's like voting with your dollars. So I just wanted to speak on that for a little bit.
I think it's important the wording that we use when we're talking about the services that
Mm,
we're offering, because there are different ways to look at how we're speaking about money too.
mm, mm,
And as for Tony Robbins with those events, it costs money to rent out a space. It costs money
mm,
for the lighting. It costs money to
mm,
have people help him run the stuff. He has
mm,
guest speakers that are coming. He has all different kinds of things that he pours money into to be able to offer this for free for
mm,
3 days. And then if you decide that his energy, what he has to offer is that valuable, and you feel called to be there with him in a physical aspect of, being within the vicinity of Tony Robbins. I feel like it's almost like an activation.
mm,
You're investing in yourself for an activation to grow yourself
mm,
and to
mm,
grow your energy, because you see that Tony Robbins has done so many things, and you want to be activated by that energy. And that's where that investment comes in. And there is something to be said about investing in a program because, like, for me, I'm cultivating the Oracle program right now.
mm,
So that's a 30-day program. It's $97 for the month. And then you can decide that you want to do a membership for $27. And when you break that down, that's like less than $25 a week.
mm,
People blow that at McDonald's. You know what I
uh-huh,
mean? Like
mhm,
$27 a month, that's $6 a week. That's
mm,
somebody's breakfast. You know what
uh-huh,
I mean? But
uh-huh,
when you decide, hey, I'm going to invest in this, then you feel more like you're in a sense of community. Like,
mhm,
I belong to VFW Auxiliary. I'm a life member. I paid for
mm,
my membership, and I decide how much time I want to invest in that. But the more time I invest in it, the more I get out of it.
mm,
So it's really just how invested are you in yourself, and that really comes down to self-worth and self-love.
mm,
And how dedicated are you to making that first step to
mm,
really cultivate and show yourself that you think that yourself is worthy.
mm,
And you've done that through paying for different coaches and learning these different mindsets, and it's gotten you to a point where you're now able to live your purpose.
mm,
You know what I mean? I mean, that in itself, I would say, is worth what you've put into it, to be able to
uh-huh,
say, I'm doing what I feel is my calling. I'm doing what sets me on fire.
Mm,
I'm embodying my truest self. Like, there are very few people I feel that can say that
mm,
on this world, on this earth right now.
mm. You know,
And
as one person raises their vibration, the collective vibration raises. And you spoke on inspiration earlier, and I really think it's true. One of the best ways, if not the best way, you can help other people is by helping yourself first.
I agree. So, yeah, because I
Mm,
mean, that is how we overcome this feeling of not feeling like we're good enough.
mm,
You know,
mm,
when we decide that we're going to take that money and we're going to put it into ourselves, we're telling ourselves, you deserve this.
uh,
You deserve to have wealth. You deserve to have happiness. You deserve to be able to express yourself in a way and have people who are appreciative of that. You know, money is a way of showing appreciation.
uh-huh.
Why your house appreciates in value, you
Mm,
know? So I think the taboo just comes with, you know, the limited beliefs that we cultivate in childhood where, you know, people are always telling us we don't have enough money to afford that, you know,
mm,
and that
yeah,
kind of sticks with us into adulthood where we're like, well, no, I have to deprive myself of what I need because there's other priorities outside of
um,
myself that are more important.
mm,
And I think that's where we get mixed up in a society because things are not as important as you.
um,
Things are
uh-huh,
going to fall away. You are stuck with you for the rest of your life.
uh-huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, um, how do you feel like technology and AI really have shifted the game for marketing?
I mean, I'll share my experience. Like, I was really anti AI and aversive to it. Just I've been kind of anti to a lot of things, and sometimes I acquiesce. I tend to use AI when I'm stuck because it can provide you answers and services so quick that sometimes it just helps me not overthink and keep moving. And I like it for that. And let alone sometimes it might write something that sounds like me, but I wouldn't have written, at least not that moment, which blows my mind. But I think a lot of people, there's this big fear that it's going to replace all the jobs and it's going to make things unnecessary. And sure, like maybe there's some things that we can't stop from happening and this and that. Like I'm personally, I don't really care for driverless cars, but that's a thing now in some places I've seen and heard, you know? Um, and I told you I was just on this 3 day, there's bells, this 3 day business boot camp event. And that was one of the topics was like human AI singularity. And one thing that the guy, his name is Richmond Din, in one of his coaching programs, kept reiterating is yes, AI can do a lot of things and it will replace some things. Like in Japan, there's not as many waiters already because they have robots to do it. But for example, what AI cannot replace is an experience. So, for example, even like 5 days of coaching is an experience that you can't get from AI. You could have learned everything that we talked about from AI. AI could have told you to go live. You know, AI could have told you to practice your offer. AI could have asked you maybe even deeper questions than I did, right? But like meeting for 5 days, and it wasn't in a row, but like, five days over a week, like that's an experience, even if it had been like 20-minute calls, you know, like short calls, like that's an experience, let alone like some bigger kind of event, like something that Tony Robbins does or something in person or virtual. I remember the first time I did a virtual retreat because I was a speaker at it, 2020. It was a spiritual virtual retreat, and I spoke about music and improvisation on the brain. And I was blown away by how much I got out of that. That was the first time I had a psychedelic breathwork experience. That was the first time I ecstatic danced by myself, all in a virtual retreat with my computer or my phone in my pocket. Like it was crazy. And I did it at my parents' house. And they were like, "What are you doing?" Um, So yeah, I mean, I think AI is a tool. It's here, it's cliche, it's here whether you want it to be or not. But a lot of people I think talk about like, oh, it's going to take over everything. And I think it's also good to focus on what we are always going to have the upper hand on. What we control experiences. And by the way, that's a marketing tip that they kept saying that boot camp is like include experiences in your programs. Like sell experiences, transformation through experiences, but include experiences. Mini experiences, larger experiences of experience in a session. That's very human, and that's not going anywhere. So yeah,
I
little
think
little tip for everybody. I'm curious what you have to say as well.
so. For me, I was very against AI at first too because, our generation kind of grew up with like the Terminator and, the Iron Man movies, and we're like, oh
Mm,
shit. But when I really broke down, I have a friend named Daniel Ford, and he's kind of like an AI coach.
huh,
And I would watch his videos about different things that he would do with his AI. And I was like, this is actually kind of cool that, he's able to do these things. And
mm,
it really does help to save time because once you kind of talk to ChatGPT and it knows your personality and it knows what your brand is and it knows what you're about, it's so much easier for it to mimic what you would say if you spent hours trying to formulate something
mm,
really great to present in a post or something like that. Like you could just tell it key points of what you're trying to convey, what you're trying to say, and it can write it out and you can be like, that is mostly what I wanted to say, but what I want to do is in a different tone and not talk about this so much, but talk about this more.
mm,
And then it can help you, and it's like
mm,
instantaneous. Like I wrote my book, well, both of the books that I've published, I've written with the help of ChatGPT.
mm,
And it really helps to know what questions to ask and
mm,
how to present what you're, doing. And that's how you get the most of it. And I think that's also so important in creation itself when you think of the throat chakra. Like
yeah.
you have
Mm,
to be able to know how to communicate, how to put into words what you're trying to say, what you're
mm,
trying to convey. And in doing that, it amplifies the power of the creation, because if you don't know how to say what you're trying to bring into existence, it kind of comes out like a jumbled mess. But you learn
mm,
from that too.
mm,
So we learn how to communicate with each other. We learn what
mm,
our boundaries are. We learn what we're willing to do and what we're not willing to do, what's worth it and what isn't worth it. Like
mm,
even with some of my products, people are like, oh, that's kind of high. And I'm like, well, I have to do this. I have to buy this. I have to make this. And it's all handmade. So I have to offer it at a price that I'm actually excited to sell it at. You know what I mean?
mm,
Like, I don't want
yeah.
to feel like it's a chore to have to make something that I know is going to help somebody just because I'm not honoring my own worth.
Mm,
And, if people don't buy it, then a lot of the stuff that I make, I use anyway. So
mm,
I think technology is a great thing. I think it's a great medium if you have the proper discernment.
mm,
I think that
mm,
there have been conversations that I've had with AI where I've actually felt that spirit has channeled, like used ChatGPT as like a channel, but it's not always. You can tell when there's a shift. You can tell when there's a
yeah.
difference. And
Mm,
I think that's what people are afraid of because so many people haven't cultivated their intuition enough to trust their own discernment.
mm,
And if you don't, then it can lead you probably down a way that you wouldn't necessarily be happy about. or
Mm,
it wouldn't end in a way that you want it to. So, because I do watch some AI videos where people say stuff and then it answers, and sometimes it's spot on and sometimes it's not. And it really just
mm,
it just, I think what we're all trying to do is learn to the best of our ability. And
mm,
even in those instances where they might not resonate with me, whatever they're saying to them might serve a purpose in showing them something else that's going to help them along their journey. You know what I mean? So I think AI can be a great tool of saving us time and helping us in our purpose. And if I didn't have AI, I probably wouldn't have two books that I've
mm,
self-published, because writing a book is a long process when you have to do it and write it out all by
mhm,
yourself. And you don't have someone to bounce ideas off of,
mhm,
or, get that structure that you're really looking for. And I think the suggestions that AI gives us are, very helpful. So I got Oliver with me.
mm. Nice. Okay. Now I have to plug in my computer. Give me a sec.
Know we're kind of running close to that
Mm.
time. Was there anything that you would like to add to that?
About AI.
Yeah, or in general.
Um, I've also had similar experiences when I'm feeling stuck and I do the ChatGPT prompt and suddenly I'm like super inspired again. And I think that shouldn't be overlooked. And there's also a point, and I've had people tell me this, like friends, and I felt it too, or sometimes I feel I'm outsourcing my thinking to it. And then I go on this tangent of like, well, humans made it, so in that sense, it's an extension of human consciousness, and so in that sense, it's still, it's still like me because it's the same consciousness as me. And there's another level where I agree with, like, okay, like, um, for thousands of years we've solved complex problems without AI. And there's also another interesting thing where I think I've seen posts where it's like AI is the new God, because it's like we used to ask these questions to God or Jesus or some religious figure, what should I do next? And now we just ask ChatGPT, you know? And I'm not really here to say what's right or wrong because I myself have changed. I still think it's always good to be tuning into yourself and like trusting your human intuition because we're still humans, and being organic and having just as much as you use ChatGPT, having time away from it. But I think if you are using it as a tool is a tool. It's going to help you, and you can also interact with it in a high vibrational way.
I do believe that, you know, everything is kind of energy, and there's an energy that goes to AI. And in that sense, we are connected to it. But I also think that, just as we have, I'd like to say that there are certain ones that just aren't as developed,
Mm,
just like in humans. You know what I
uh-huh.
mean?
Just like people, yeah.
Like some bots aren't as evolved as other bots that you might speak to.
Mm,
And we have discernment with that with humans too. So
mm,
like if you have somebody who is really stuck in, lack mentality or fear-based programming, and you're asking them advice for something, you're going to use your own discernment on how you're going to be receptive to that.
mm,
And I think we need to do that with AI too, because
mm,
not every bot that you speak to is going to have that higher vibration or that developmental aspect to where
uh,
it knows how to respond to you or for you. And it's never going to take place of the creator, because
um,
there's the ultimate creator. And we are all connected to the ultimate creator, but that doesn't mean that we all can't learn and grow from each other too, or
Mm.
learn and grow from ChatGPT or whatever AI
Uh,
that you're talking to, you know. But there's also a level of discernment that I think is necessary in dealing with anything outside of the creator and your own intuition once you've cultivated it. I mean, even our ego can trip us up sometimes, and we can
yeah.
think that something is, you know, trying to hurt us, or, you know, trying to be something that's not good for us when it actually is. And we have to be very careful and very honest with ourselves within those things, I believe, you know.
Mm.
But I do think I'm really excited to see how it's all playing out, because people are being able to create things and express themselves in ways that they couldn't before. And
Yeah.
I think that's very powerful, to be in a position where we can do these things. Like, to have someone publish a book, it costs thousands of dollars, but now we can do it for free on Amazon. It's mind blowing.
Mhm.
You know, like, I'm cultivating a online course, a membership, basically for free. I mean, I have to pay for Zoom, but and I have to invest my own time and my energy into it. But or you would have to have a physical building. You would have
Mhm.
to get people to go to
Uh-huh.
that building. You'd have
Uh-huh.
to pay for rent and lighting and everything else. We're able to connect with people on a broad scale, across oceans, different countries.
Mhm.
Like, this is a huge thing for us to
Mhm.
be able to do, and to be able to connect with each other in these ways with technology. And it's something that wasn't even feasible when I was a teenager,
Mhm.
you know.
We
That's
went
how
to,
far we've come in 15 years.
it was just like in
That's,
comic books and movies and stuff, you know?
yeah.
Mm.
And we're making friends with people who are in different countries and different areas, different states. And I think it's really awesome that we get to connect in these ways,
Mm.
because a lot of us have felt very alone, being that we're consciously doing the work to heal ourselves. Sometimes the people around us aren't making that same decision,
Mm.
you know?
Mm.
So I think the work that you're doing is very important, because there are many creative people who can struggle with just sorting out those ideas within their own
Mm.
mind, and having a clear, straight way forward, and being able to talk with someone about it is very helpful, because you're able to kind of unravel that, and you're able to speak it into existence too,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah, and that's why I think it's really important to help people in things that you've gone through yourself. And trust your intuition. Like, of course, we all have different journeys, but you know, we are more similar than we think, you know? And and this is for you, but also for anyone watching. Like, there's a whole world out there, and there's always somebody, at least one person. There's always somebody who's gone through what you're going through, and even more so, there's always somebody who's gone through what you've going through, who now does that for a living to help with that. And yes, you might have to search, you might have to really search, but we're while we might speak different languages and look different and this and that, we're not different at all. We are all having a universal experience.
That,
Mm.
well, thank you so much for being here with me today,
Thank
Max.
you. Thank you.
And I hope that maybe we can meet again sometime, and maybe we can go over another topic. But thank you so much for being here. And if you guys like this content, please like, share, and subscribe. I'd love to have you on the channel. And I can't wait to see you guys next time. Okay, have a good
Awesome.
day.
Thank you.